So the party is at a critical moment in its history, just badly lost an election. It needs reuniting, needs to develop a policy platform that's going to deal with the threat from reform, but also to bring back those voters from Labour and the Liberal Democrats, and that needs leadership. Why me? I didn't come into Parliament until I was 48 years old, so I had a lot of real-world experience outside. That's what most people tell me they want to see in a politician. What I did with that time was I built my own businesses, literally sitting at the kitchen table, starting from scratch, bringing teams of people together, motivating them, getting a common objective, storming those metaphorical mountains. And I did that here in the UK and in the United States of America, and I know how to lead. So the biggest thing that I will bring as leader is leadership, and that is the most important thing that anybody participating in this election should be thinking about.
I knew of you in government. We've worked on things together, and you and your teams, but would you accept that perhaps the rest of the party doesn't know you as well?
So I think there's some profile raising to be done, but I think a lot of the people out there, whether they're party members or not, know of me. I mean, I did about 25% of all the broadcast rounds during the run-up to the general election. Why did I do that? Because I cared about my colleagues winning their seats rather than losing them, and I was the one that was prepared to stand up, be counted, put my head above the parapet, take the incoming and to deal with it. So, it's a long contest. There's a lot of time to get to know more members between now and early November as well.
Do you think the party as a whole has really accepted what happened to it and worked out why it happened?
So I think there were 5 things at least that happened. 3 of them were things that we had no control over, and 2 of them we had control over. The 3 that we had no control over was COVID, which turned us into a big spending party for a while, 400 billion to support the economy and families and so on. That in turn, of course, lent into a higher tax burden that became part of the issue for us economically. The second thing was the import of inflation as a consequence of the Ukraine-Russia war, and once again having to support families with cost of living payments through that and the challenges of high inflation and inevitably higher interest rates as monetary policy got tightened. The third thing we had no control over was we've been in government for 14 years, and it's always harder after a long period to sustain or present yourself as something new and the kind of engine of change for the future. But there were 2 things we did to ourselves, and one of those was around losing trust and integrity and that sense of values that the electorate look for. So, look, as members, we always typically think about policies and the left-right spectrum and so on, but a lot of voters actually just ask a simple question: does this party share my values? And I think things like Partygate and a number of the scandals that were not just around at that time, but subsequently and went on right up to the eve of the election, were about that sense of trust and values, and that got broken. But the second thing that we did to ourselves was the mini-budget, and was the loss of that sense of economic competence that our party had built up over very many years. And of course we have in the past lost it, but generally we've maintained it, to the extent that the Labour Party were perfectly happy to drag us onto that terrain and beat us over the head with it. So I think those 2 things were particularly difficult. So it's left us with a trust issue, and it's left us with a delivery issue that we need to address. But before we even get into a conversation with the public, they've got to start wanting to listen to us again. And that's going to be about a new leader providing effective and responsible opposition to this government.
Do you suffer at all from being very much allied with Rishi? Are you aware of that, or do you think that's just not the case?
It's not something that's come through the campaign, actually. I thought there were perfectly good reasons why we should want Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, particularly after, as I mentioned, the mini-budget. What we needed to do was settle the economy and take some serious and sensible decisions, and I thought he was the right person to do that at that time. And I think amongst the many successes, actually, of our entire period in office since 2010, which of course have now been blotted out and overshadowed by the calamity of this general election result, restoring economic stability and settling the markets, getting inflation down to its target of 2%, getting real wages growing in each of the last 12, 13 months, getting high levels of employment, low levels of unemployment and so on, are considerable achievements, and I think he was very much part of that.
Do you think that there is something in this whole left-right? I see quite a lot of people and candidates. Is there something there that we weren't conservative enough?
So I think really these labels of left-right are quite unhelpful. And classically what people do is they say, well, the issues that reform voters are concerned about, so net migration, stopping the votes, lower taxes, for example, are naturally the preserve of the right. I don't think they are, actually. I think they're common ground issues that actually matter to voters right across the political spectrum. And in fact, if you poll Liberal Democrats on things like net migration, they're quite concerned about it too. So I think we've got to kind of step away from that. I think what we have lost is this sense of the Conservative Party being a bright, shining beacon for opportunity, aspiration and achievement. And we last really felt that probably back in the 1980s. And I think that is probably the most important thing that we have to provide the fiscal space, because I think it's a fiscal issue and a tax issue as much as anything else, to try and reignite that. And I think the platform, therefore, that we need to build going forward, and I would build as leader, would very much have the economy and what kind of economy we're going to have right at its heart.
Do you think we have sorted out what it is to be a Conservative? As a party, do we know what a proper Conservative is?
Yeah, I think we do. I think it's about opportunity and aspiration and achievement and facilitating that and being an opportunity-based society. I think it is about a party that believes in lower taxation and freedom, and it's a party that believes in public services, but public services that are provided in an efficient and productive way. We believe in sound money and a stable economy. We believe in home ownership and communities being stronger if people have a sense of involvement in them in that way. We believe in strong defence. I think all of those things are very strongly agreed to across the Conservative Party. And I think there have been some issues that have kind of been a litmus test as to whether you're on the left or the right. The ECHR, for example, would be one of those, I think, and Brexit clearly in the past to a degree has been as well. But I think there's far, far more that unites us and we have in common than divides us across the party.
What would you do? What do you want to do with the party as a structure? Because most of the candidates have seemed to say it needs to change in some way. And how would that look under your leadership?
So I was the first person actually to start, one of your illustrious predecessors, Tim Montgomery, recognised as one of the first people to start talking about the party structure, because it really matters. Because whereas we've got a slow time lane for policy development, this can take months and years, and that incidentally is one of the reasons why you don't paint yourself in too starkly too early on certain issues like ECHR, for example. You take the parliamentary party with you and you take your time over it. On the May election track, of course, time is very, very short, and that's why party and the shape of the party is so important. So what would I do? First thing I would do is we've got to build a mass membership organisation, and part of that is answering the question, what does it mean to be a member? At the moment, it means you pay £39 and all you ever hear from the centre is an endless stream of requests for more cash. I think we should look to the trade unions. I know that's not a very popular sort of trade unions and conservatism, but although a lot of their members are conservatives, they're very good at generally looking after their members and providing them with benefits and in a form of engagement that is inclusive and makes them want, in their case, to pay rather more than £39 a year to be a member. So I think we've got to look very closely at what it means to be a member. The second thing is we've got to have more respect from the centre for the association. So the days of parachuting in a central office nominated candidate without a vote of the local association right at the very last minute have got to finish. So I will absolutely put a stop to that. We need candidates voted in by local associations and 4+ years in advance of the general election. But the third thing, which is really important, is the way in which we function currently at the centre as an election-winning machine. It's dysfunctional and it's not working. What we need to do is we need to bring together the digital function, the rebuttal function, the research function at CCHQ, and I as leader need to go in and ask the following question and get a satisfactory answer. Right, tell me what are the issues in Devon, Northumbria or whatever at the local level, tick that box. Tell me where all the opposition councillors stand on those issues and what other issues they are attacking us on and where they're vulnerable on. And most important of all, now show me the ammunition that you have generated, digital or otherwise, that we're sending out to our candidates and our councillors in the field to allow them to win those battles. Now, that doesn't necessarily require a huge amount of financial investment, but it is about management and structure. And I think that's one of those 80-20 changes we can make fairly quickly, and we need to, because in order to win in May, we're going to have to get that kind of stuff working and fast. And if we don't start winning in May, then we're going to get more hollowed out on the ground. It's going to be more difficult for 2029.
Are you more concerned about how one defeats Labour, or are you worried about any kind of existential threat from reform, and how would you tackle it?
So I'm concerned about both ends. I mean, if you look at 97, which was a very difficult result for us, you could argue it's worse in the sense that there's a bigger Lib Dem bloc in the Commons down, and we've got over to our right a small number of MPs for reform. We didn't have that in 97, so I think there is a huge challenge. We've got to address both groups. But the way to do it, I think, with the reform group, is no deals with Nigel Farage. We've got to start attacking populism, and we've got to start recasting Nigel Farage as a populist rather than somebody that tells it the way it is and channels popular policies. And by populism I mean this kind of politics that is about setting up a them and an us, the bogeyman and the man of the people who's going to stand up for the masses against the bogeyman. And we've seen that around the riots. So what Nigel Farage did, he stepped out and started suggesting the police were not being truthful with the public about the circumstances around Southport. He also linked that to the attack on a uniformed officer in Kent, and questioning whether terrorism might have been part of what happened there or not. Were the security services by implication telling us the full truth? All of that erodes trust in the system, in authority, etc., and moves us a bit closer to where Trumpite America is, and that really disturbs me. So I think there's a bit of work to do in terms of revealing to people what Nigel Farage is really all about. But we have to have absolute respect for the issues that are of concern to reform voters. So net migration, absolutely, and they're right. They are right, absolutely right.
Or stop being members.
We did not deliver on stopping the boats. We certainly didn't deliver on net migration. In fact, it was up over 600,000 last year. I mean, absolutely fell short, and on lower taxes and so on. So the way to get back to your question, that we reach out to those folks, is by addressing the issues that they care about. But they are also people who, many of them are voting reform because they just simply protested against the fact that we were not competent generally, and they lost trust with us. So the two issues that we talked about earlier. So if we regain that, I think some of those people will naturally drift back. We shouldn't assume, Giles, that of course that everyone in the reform column would otherwise have voted Conservative. About 20% of them would have gone for Labour or the Liberal Democrats, and a good proportion of them would have probably stayed at home in the absence of reform. So that's that point. And then on Labour and the Lib Dems, I think we have those kind of issues that matter to them as well. They want to see good public services. They want to see an economy that can afford to fix the roads and do all the things, and police the streets and do all the things that we expect of a civilised society. And that is, at its core, an economic issue. How do we go from what since 2008 and the financial crisis has been an economy characterised by more anemic growth and productivity to one in which both of those lines are going up more steeply, and ending up in a position where we are 18% less productive than America, France and Germany, which if we were up their productivity levels would mean that overnight our economy would be 18% bigger. Imagine what we could do. The answer to that is around, a lot of it is around investment, around our tax policy, around skills, around infrastructure, around planning and things of that nature. And we've got to improve productivity, particularly in the public sector, where, for example, with the NHS, we pump more and more and more money in, and productivity has actually gone backwards. And some of that is about the nature of the investment. Too much revenue spend, not enough capital spend, so that you've not got the systems, the IT and all the good stuff you need in an organisation of that size to make it efficient. So this is the kind of thinking we've got to do now over months and years to get to a position where we can credibly say we have created fiscal space because we have the right plan. And do you know what? The IFS and the OBR and everybody says that it kind of stacks up in the way they didn't with the mini budget. And as a consequence of that space, we're going to do this for you. And I'd include welfare incidentally in the mix as well. We've got to save money from the welfare budget, as I was doing as Secretary of State. And we don't say we're going to do this for you. And part of that will be lower taxes. Part of it will be a big, big, bold offer to younger people. Average age of a Tory voter in the last election, 63, totally untenable. But if we're to address that, we're going to have to address housing, we're going to have to address student loans. There are things that we're going to have to do that are going to cost money. Not all of it will cost money, but some of it will. such that young people get out of bed in the morning and say the Tory party is on my side.
You're a wise enough man to know that there will be some people listening to this who will go, this sounds very much like, okay, we lost, but the plan is to do business as usual, just do it better. And that misses something we feel is fundamentally wrong and needs a whole rethink, that this sounds a little too much like managerialism, I'd just be better at managing it.
Yeah.
You know there will be people who think that. Tell them why they're wrong.
They're completely wrong. So we went into the last election actually promising something about the future that was very different to the past, and that was a strong downward trajectory on taxes. We said to the British people, we will abolish national insurance. I mean, that is quite an extraordinary thing, employee national insurance. How was that funded? That was funded through £18 billion worth of savings, of which 2/3 came from my department. So I had worked out how to take £12 billion out of the welfare budget as part of a process of getting hundreds of thousands of more people back into work. That's an example of radicalism that can be translated into the very dramatic changes, in this case, in the tax terrain. So there are many, many radical things that we can do. I do think that it was very difficult and it would have been for any government with COVID and with the cost of living crisis and the money I had to spend, all the interventions we had to make at that point, to cut through with radical cuts in taxes, for example, and doing a lot of the exciting things that I think could have happened in the absence of that. But no, we can be radical, and I think I've proven at Department of Work and Pensions that that's exactly what I can do. Take long-term sickness and disability. My reforms to work capability assessments, the OBR says, means over 400,000 fewer people will be going on to those benefits. They will be going on the road to work. That's over 400,000 people. So I'm prepared to be really radical because the prize is very large.
In the system that we have, people want to have a feel of you as a person, the leader as a person. What should they know about you that they don't know now?
Well, I don't know what they know, those that listen, but what I think they should know is that I have a past that is outside of Parliament, that I set up business here and in the United States, my own company starting from scratch, so I'm a self-starter. I can motivate people, build teams and meet objectives, just the kind of leadership qualities that are needed for the task in hand. I have a variety of interests. I trained at one point just as a hobby to be a qualified tour guide. So I'm qualified to tour the British Museum, Tate Modern, Tate Britain, Westminster Abbey, the Tower of London, Stonehenge, Windsor Castle, all sorts of other places, because I'm very interested in history. What else did I do? Back in my past, I qualified, I have a private pilot's license, so I've done all that and flew all over America and did lots of flying and things of that nature. No, I think I'm a rounded individual. I care very much about my family and my wife and my children and all that kind of stuff. And I find generally the more people meet me and get to talk to me, perhaps the more interesting they find me.
Because it's quite a daunting thing. Being the leader of a party puts you under a level of scrutiny that sort of normal bounds of privacy really don't hold. It's people want to get right into your life at every angle.
Into your dustbins, Giles. That's what they want to get into. That's
Is that where they should be looking?
That's where they should go. They should be looking at my takeaway cartons on the weekend.
You do realise someone might take that as a signal.
Probably already doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of scrutiny that one needs to think about when contemplating doing this.
Yeah, well, I'm very satisfied that there are no skeletons in my cupboard that I need to worry about. That's not to say that people won't concoct things and give me a hard time, and that's all part of the job. But I think you get used to that to a degree, Giles. I've been an MP now for 14 years, and I've been in the cabinet, both as leader of the House of Commons and as Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and you do get a very high level of scrutiny, and quite rightly so. And if you have a thin skin, then politics is not a game to get involved with, I'm afraid.
Last thing of all.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're in it to win it. If you don't, would your analysis of what needs to be done to bring the party together, would that include working for any of the rest?
Oh, I'd be totally supportive of whoever wins this contest. And I have to say, I think one of the very positive things about this contest is the tone between the candidates has generally been pretty positive, and I think we're all united. All the conversations I have with my competitors here are along those lines. I think we all know we need to unite, and that means every one of us, irrespective of what happens in this contest. Yeah.
Mel, thank you very much indeed for sitting down with Conservative Home.
A great pleasure. Thank you, Giles.